strategy.
Ready to go?
Okay, we
Believe
just
so.
started streaming again.
So you ready for me to start broadcast?
Yes.
Yes.
Done.
Okay. Welcome to the September 2020 meeting of the Clifton Town Council. We're meeting tonight by Zoom electronically because of the worldwide pandemic that's been declared as an emergency in Virginia as well as in the town of Clifton. And pursuant to that, we have adopted measures under Commonwealth statute that allow us to engage in electronic meetings instead of in-person meetings during the duration of the pandemic emergency. So we are proceeding in accordance with that. I think when we get to stage 4, we will not be, but that's a little while down the road and certainly not now. So according to that, we're working through Zoom, and for those of you who are watching, we make the Zoom meetings available to anyone who wants to register, and we're also broadcasting on YouTube to make sure that anybody who wishes to watch and see what we're doing and how we make our decisions has the opportunity to do so. So with that lead in, we'll start our meeting. The first item on the agenda is the report of the town clerk.
I received, a couple of people pointed out to me that I inadvertently omitted part of a motion. I captured the data, I just need to type it back in. And that's it.
Okay. Have you made the correction or?
Yes. It's just the motion where Daryl moved to approve the bird boxes. Sorry, I'm not explaining it well, but.
I moved to approve the minutes with the mentioned correction in place.
Second. Any further discussion? We can do it by acclamation. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Treasurer's report.
Hi, glad to be here. Okay, this is the treasurer's report that I submitted for the period ended August 30th. I sent it out a day early so that I could make sure that you got it in time for tonight. So the only thing that's missing is the interest on the that was accrued during the month of August. And I'll report on that at the end of the report. Okay, so the summary of the cash balances as of the August 30th reflects a total of $1,311,066.45. There is a detailed report that indicates what that's made up of. I think the only notation was related to the interest, which I will report at the end. The highlights for the transactions that occurred in August include additional things for the Pink House rental. We did collect a good part of the August rent in July, so that's why there is why it's only reflected at a low amount this month. For taxes and permits revenue, we received a Virginia car distribution tax of $483, ARB permit of 10. We received beep holes from prior years of $2,600. State communications tax of 401, franchise fees of 529, and we received the motor vehicle fees of $400 for this coming year, this year, and use permit fee of $75. Under contractual expenses, the highlights for August were related to the replacement of the HVAC system at the Pink House in the amount of $7,655, as well as an advance for other repairs there that are related to woodwork replacement and structural repairs of $1,000, and the HVAC analysis charges of $227. The $7,600 that is related to the HVAC replacement will be capitalized at the end of the year as a capital improvement for the Pink House, but we're going to be reporting it against our $10,000 line item budget for the Pink House maintenance and repairs, just for your tracking purposes of what's being spent this year, and then we will shift that to a capitalized expense at the end of the fiscal year. Okay. The other items are less significant. We had legal fees to the town that I'll be asking for your authorization to pay in the amount of $1,150 and $725 to COVID. And I'll provide that as a separate request after the treasurer's report. The Zoom expenses for COVID-19 were $288.66 in the month of August. We had a banner replacement cost of $245, mowing of $600. Okay. Also submitted with the treasurer's report is a subsidiary report that shows all of the COVID expenses for this fiscal year that are contributed to the COVID-19 CARES funding. For July and August, expenses of $41,602, most of which were the grants to businesses. It gives us a balance of $8,163.69. That will be reported to Fairfax County this week.
A balance, meaning that's what's left?
That's what's left, right?
Okay.
In the total amount. Okay. Moving, looking forward to September. The Fairfax County invoice for the election last year, you recall that we received an invoice for $4,223.97. I was able to get through to them today, and they have reissued the invoice for $1,064.52, which is in line with what we paid the last time. That's a 75% reduction. So that's good news. And if we haven't received it in the mail yet, it should be here probably by Friday. So hopefully we can go ahead and get that paid. But I guess it will require your approval
Marilyn,
in that amount.
did they give any explanation of what had happened?
No, I wasn't able to talk with Eric Spencer, who was the person, Eric Spicer, Fairfax County, who was the person who actually revised it. I just got the person that I talked with last time, but she was able to verify that he did adjust the invoice and that it was in the mail. So it could have just been a mistake, but I didn't get any clarification on it, so. So that will be a roll call vote that we'll want to make at the end of the report.
And what is the new amount?
The new amount is $1,064.52.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It was a reduction of 3,200, which is 75% of what they originally invoiced us.
Okay.
So I wanted to report that the additional interest that I was able to pull down from the bank accounts today was $592, which was accrued during August toward the CDs at United Bank. John Marshall Bank had not posted any interest on the CDs that are there as yet. So there probably will be another amount that will be posted that's applicable to August, but it wasn't online available as of today, which is a little unusual, but it's not the first time that's happened. But those interest dollars will go ahead and get posted as of August 31 or whichever day they actually end up hitting the bank. Okay, so that's the treasurer's report. And then the other items that it was going to report will be related to your approvals for particular expenses. So normally you ask me to do that after the treasurer's report's approved or acted on.
Oh, okay. I'll make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Motion
Thank you.
carries. Number
So-
of discrete things, the legal bills and the election charge.
Right. So the first would be the election invoice of $1,064.52. And that will be an FY20 expense. So you know, it won't show up on this year, but
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the payment of $1,064.52 to the county election board for running the 2020 election for the town of Clifton.
Second.
All right, if there's no discussion, we'll do a roll call. Holloway, aye.
Frost, aye.
Milne, aye.
Donald, aye.
Poe, aye.
Line, aye.
All right, next.
okay, we've received 2 invoices from Maureen Gilmore. The first one was for July for $1,875. $725 of it was related to the COVID-19 and $1,150 was related to the town expenses.
Okay, I've looked at the invoice. All the charges are reasonable and were requested. And I'll make a motion to approve the payment of the invoice for $1,875 to the town attorney. July 2020.
Second.
And we'll go through these and then we can talk about them a bit after. But is there any further discussion on this one? There's another one after it. Okay, we'll do roll call. Holloway, aye.
Frost, aye.
Milne, aye.
Donald, aye.
Poe, aye.
Line, aye.
Is that everybody? Good. Okay, awesome. Next.
Okay, the next one is the invoice that I just received for the month of August. The total is for $2,000. 125 of it is related to COVID and 1,875 is related to town expenses.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the payment of the August 2020 invoice for the town attorney in the amount of $2,000.
Efros, second.
Second,
All right, any further discussion? All right, Holloway, aye.
Efros, I.
Milne, I.
Donald, I.
oh, aye.
Klein, I.
Okay, thanks. And just look, I mean, these are like $2,000 a month, so this is not insignificant. We need to continue to watch this. The last month and a half have been for the sewer policy, working on lot consolidation, etc. We'll get a report on where that is. I hope that'll be moving along. But all of these things cost money when our town attorney's involved. Town attorney does a great job. And we're real lucky to have her available to us, but you know, we should not miss the fact that we're continuing to spend on legal costs, and especially in a year where revenues are clearly down. So something to be aware of. These charges were all needed, but just something to be aware of. Marilyn, anything else?
No, I think I covered everything.
Okay, thank you. Next
You're
is citizens' remarks. We have one registered speaker, Donna Netchard, who wanted to talk further about the idea of a town decal.
Am I on?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay, I meant to send you the pictures. I've had some conflicting input from various people in the town. So I've got some really cute decal ideas, which I will forward to you. One includes a little choo-choo train with an oval green. Some people are saying, why do we want a decal? Why do we want a decal? Who would get the decal? How would you decide? You know, is there some restriction on who could buy it? Like when you buy one from the Outer Banks, I don't have them myself, but I mean, I guess anybody can buy them in the gift shop, just saying that they love the Outer Banks. So maybe the idea of the decal is not of any use. It was just an idea to identify, because some of us, I don't have the historic plate anymore. Michelle said we can still get them from Amanda if we want them. So do you think that there's any merit to having an ID for people who actually live in the Clifton community to recognize who actually lives here?
I think the origin of this was concern about potential vandalism around town and things of that nature, and being able to identify if somebody's from out of town.
All right.
Do I have that right?
Well, it started with the Second Baptist Church right after the liberation, and they were saying they wanted to see if there's anybody parking up there or doing any vandalism up there. And somebody said, well, it'd be nice to know if we know if we're up there checking that we're okay, that it's okay if my car is up there because I'm the good guy. So I don't know how other communities do this, if it's even necessary. So I guess I need your input on whether you think would it be if you're a town resident or a member of the CBA, or that you've paid B-Pol or whatever, how would you use the decal to our benefit?
I think I think CBA membership is certainly a fine place to start. But in that case, I think this would be a CBA initiative,
Right,
to create the decal and make it available to their members.
right. So how would we say that somebody couldn't buy a decal who lived in Baltimore, Maryland, because they came to visit? So we would have to have somebody who would be selling them, but not in a public arena. There would have to be some criteria like this.
well, the first question is whether you want to be exclusive or inclusive.
Right,
If you want to be inclusive, you want as many people as would like them to buy them and proudly display how much they love Hilton Head or the
right,
Outer Banks or whatever. They love Clifton. It shows they're all over Clifton, even if they live in, I don't know, Wolf Run Shoals Drive or something.
right.
They're lovers of Clifton. And that would be inclusive by intent. It would be something we would make. It'd be something that would be sold somehow. We could figure that out.
Mhm.
Maybe we'd make a few bucks on it, but it's not unlike a t-shirt you wear in your car to show you self-identify with Clifton as a Cliftonite. That's a nice idea. That's a type of idea. Yeah. Another idea on the other end of the spectrum is something that's exclusive, that says only these people live in the town, and therefore they're the only ones who get certain benefits, get respect of a certain type. So we're going to be exclusive, like a country club. And in that case, we would make specific decals. They'd be numbered from 1 to blah, and they'd be sold by, Amanda. And you'd have to prove to Amanda that you were a resident or a business owner. And who knows, a secondary black market could develop or something to buy these because they'd be hot and desirable, but they would only be sold to residents in town. And then you could proudly show, like a challenge coin or whatever, I've got my Clifton thing. I'm a real Cliftonite. So that's kind of the initial question. If it's inclusive, we certainly can do it under the aegis of the town and the town council. Get 1,000 decals, 500 decals printed up for 50 cents a throw, and make them available for a couple bucks or whatever. Would be a nice idea to be Clifton proud, which seems better to me.
Better to
than the
me.
Exclusive idea, but I don't know. But that's really the question. And once you decide it's Clifton proud, then you want something that really is about Clifton pride. Meaning anybody that looks at it would go, oh, that makes me smile. There'd be a lighthouse or a palm tree, if you're in South Carolina, whatever the Clifton equivalent is of a palm tree.
Railroad.
It wouldn't be something that
Caboose.
people went, those buggers, I hate them. It wouldn't be a wedge. It wouldn't be divisive. It would be, again, the whole point is inclusive,
Right.
Clifton pride. So if that's an idea, I like the idea. I'm happy for us to pursue that, but that's what we would need to decide. Is that what we want? Inclusive? If so, let's get our brilliant graphic designers come up with something that we're proud of for Clifton pride, and then we'll get 500 of these things made. And
Well, also, I have 3 wonderful designs from the young lady who grew up in Clifton, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was a legitimate request. So I didn't want to like tell her no and make her feel that she wasn't contributing something. So I will now email you the ideas that she sent me, and one of them is outstanding, I think. So we can take it up next month. I think inclusive is definitely, if you think it's worth considering, I'll send it to you.
Okay, I open it up for the other council members. Inclusive sticker thing sounds kind of cool to me, but I open it up to others.
Okay.
Thought?
I think it's a wonderful idea. I don't know that it's going to accomplish the initial goal of identifying Cliftonites, but it will certainly identify anyone who's willing to spend money on a Clifton sticker to put on their car. And I think that's pretty close to accomplishing the goal. So
Okay.
I like it.
Okay.
Daryl's initial question is the best one. And that is that, assuming this is inclusive, not exclusive, because if you tried to do it exclusively, you have all sorts of bureaucratic mess.
Yeah, you do.
Do that. If it's going to be inclusive, then it seems to me that you ought to talk to the CBA, and the CBA ought to give one of these to every member of the CBA.
That was my original idea.
That makes the most sense to me. I mean, they've got the money, people are raising money for Clifton. It would be a great idea for the CBA to say, all right, if you're a CBA member, you can proclaim that you're a CBA member. You're a booster of Clifton, and here is the decal or whatever it is to do that. So I think this ought to be sent over to the CBA.
Right.
I don't know about that it would be a CBA exclusive thing. If there were people who aren't members of the CBA and they'd like this, I don't have any problem with them identifying with Clifton. So
Do we think the CBA is open to a joint effort?
Maybe.
I would think so. I would think so. That, in other words, it would be, I like Steve's idea, which is if you're in the CBA, you presumably are Clifton proud. And you would want one of these stickers, so they would like kind of force you to take one with each membership, and you do with it what was appropriate. But other people who come into town go, I love this place, it's great, I want to, be part of it. Or even people in town who, for whatever reason, their membership has lapsed and they don't get a sticker, could say, here's $2, give me one of those stickers. You know what? It goes to being inclusive. So we don't want to cut out the CBA, we want to include the CBA. And by the same token, we would like to be included as well. But I got to tell you, I would love to have the design come through us as something that we look at and we go, yeah, that's, something we're proud of to represent Clifton. And I'd love to get Michelle to go, yeah, I like it too. But not not exclusive this group or
Right.
exclusive that. Make sense?
Okay, I've been working on getting all the street addresses for the entire town, including all the hills and heights and the ridges. So I have 100 addresses and names. So because they're working on a CBA directory. This particular time, in order to be in the CBA directory, you must be a member. In the past, everyone in town was in the directory regardless of their CBA membership status. So we're trying to build the membership, and I think that maybe it'd be nice to have this decal as a little thank you for people. And just by the way, if you're 65 or older, you get free membership. So just spread that word. And so you may not have gotten a bill, but it means that you're still going to get your CBA newsletter online or whatever, because the 65 and over is gratis. So so there are over 100 addresses. There are some people in the Clifton town who've never joined the CBA but have always been in the directory. So that's sort of how I've segued it, and I'm trying to get everyone in town to sign up for CBA and maybe get this sticker, which is really cute. And Michelle wasn't sure, but she was wondering how we would control who gets it and all, because we don't have our tags anymore, which we used to get with the little town tag tax. But she said Amanda can still give you those tags, and I don't have those tags anymore myself. So I don't know who lives in Clifton or in the Clifton area based on tags or decals, or there's no identity anymore that way.
Oh, okay, but the idea again was not to control who could get it, but rather to make it inclusive for those who wish to identify with Clifton.
Regardless of CBA membership, town residency, so just maybe the public open, okay? So who would sell them? That's the question. And where would the money go? Which would be great to have.
Margot would sell them.
Don't worry, the Primitive Baptist Church would love to sell them for a little fundraiser.
I
Steve
think a
Jones.
lot of the businesses would sell them, like the
Margot and
pile at the
Steve will
pub.
sell them. They'll buy them from us. We'll print them for 50 cents. We'll sell them for $1.50. They'll sell them for $2.50. We'll make $50, $80. Be amazing.
I know Horse Hippie would be a no-brainer. I'm sure they would sell them too. And so, okay,
Right.
so I'm going to send you the decals designs that I've received. If you want to open it to a larger group of designers, this designer has charged us nothing for her work. And so it's worth taking a look at. So thank you for considering it.
Yeah, I mean, if one of these 3 designs is pretty awesome, we'll just go with one of those. It doesn't mean that in 3 years we can't have a new sticker.
Totally.
To make the first sticker collectible or something.
And it's certainly better than the black and white oval that you get with OBX, which is just like so.
Yes. Yeah, I don't want to overcomplicate it.
No, it's not anything like that at all.
If we find something that looks cool and people go, yeah, this is cool, it's not offensive, then we'll move on it. So send it out at the next meeting. Perhaps we can approve one of the designs.
Thank you.
Figure out how to get these printed up. I can't imagine it's that complicated. There are probably companies that print stickers.
Yeah, they are. Thank you for your
time.
That out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for citizen remarks. On to reports of committees, planning commission.
The Planning Commission met on August 25th and did the following reviews. First, we reviewed the application for a final construction use permit from Kimberly Elbori for the construction of a retaining wall located at 7221 Dell Avenue. It was confirmed construction is complete, all required county permits were obtained, and the retaining wall was built as required by the certificate of appropriateness, copies of which were reviewed by the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission recommends a final use permit be approved.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of the planning commission and issue a final use permit for 7221 Dell Avenue.
Second,
Let's do roll call just so it's clear, because this is a use permit. Holloway, aye.
Frost, aye.
Milne, aye.
Gall, aye.
Oh, aye.
Line, aye.
Is that it? Okay.
Okay,
All right.
next, the Planning Commission reviewed an application for a use permit for commercial use, an accounting firm for Anthony Reed located at 12644 Chapel Road, Suites 113 and 210. Both suites have a total of 384 net square feet of space. There are 5 employees total, and the hours of operation are 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Mr. Reed currently has a use permit for commercial use of these premises for Suite 113 for his business with the allocation of 1 parking space. However, Mr. Reed's expansion into Suite 210 would require the allocation of an additional parking space for a total of 2 spaces based on the additional square footage for the commercial office use, namely 1 parking space for every 220 net square feet of space. Since the parking tabulation for this property shows a total of 63 on-site parking spaces, and 65 of those spaces are allocated, which means 63 are allocated, and 2 additional spaces which don't exist have been allocated, the Planning Commission presently cannot recommend this application for Mr. Reed's office expansion for approval until additional parking spaces become available on site. I think if the town council recalls, we got to this situation when we did the last application. Amanda, I'm sure remembers the name. It was for the hair salon.
The garage.
Yeah. hair
Right,
garage.
but at that time, the town had gotten an email indicating that the wheelhouse would be closing. So we had anticipated that there would be an additional 5 parking spaces. Since then, despite emails back and forth, we don't know for sure what's happening there, whether that business is continuing as is, expanding, contracting, or closing. So we simply don't know. But right now, based on what everyone's been allocated, including the wheelhouse, it's now turned into a total of 65 spaces, which are needed, and only 63 spaces are on site. So even though this expansion is only 1 additional space, the Planning Commission didn't feel it could recommend, without any sort of understanding that there'd be some tenant movement there or something else was going to be done, could recommend that the application be approved and add yet another parking space to the total for which parking does not exist on site.
Fact questions. There's 1 suite of 384. And
That's
now
the-
there would,
It's
now
the-
there'd be,
Now, our understanding is 384 was the total for both suites.
both suites together?
Yes, is that right, Amanda? I know, that's what I have on the application in front of me.
I think so, yes.
So they're 192 square feet each office?
Yeah, and
mm.
some of those offices are small, and they are in fact 192 square feet. That's exactly it.
Okay, so they have two 192 square foot offices. Is that
We
correct?
think, well, I can't tell you. The first one was 192. The total is now 384. So it's probably a good assumption that the other expanded office suite is also 192.
Okay, and they're suite 113 and 210, so they cannot be next to each other, I wouldn't think.
The suite numbers are very strangely laid out in there, and I know there's a plat. Let me just look.
Okay, and
There is a plat attached to the application,
awesome.
and yeah,
And there are 5 employees
right.
with the 2 suites.
That's right. Now, they're not
Okay.
all there at any one time, the representative of the business told us. And as you know, for a parking, if it's an office use, we don't count numbers of employees. We allocate solely basis on square footage. But
Okay,
you know, sometimes in the past, obviously, there is a provision in this section of the code that the town council can waive the parking requirements upon a good showing that they're not needed, or, you know, that somebody is walking to work or whatever. However, in this instance, you know, even if somebody is walking to work, there's a total of 5 employees here. So it's simply not feasible to do. And we didn't recommend that.
so the employees are just for context. They're not actually used in the calculation. Is that correct?
Exactly. They're for
Okay.
context. For an understanding of why we didn't examine special circumstances for waiving the parking requirements.
Got it, understood. So there's 1 space required for 113 and 1 space required for 210.
Correct.
Based on 220 square feet, they're a little under that. So 1 and 1, that's a total of 2. And if somebody said, well, we should reduce it to 0 because there's no one, your point is there are 5 employees. So, you know, 2 spaces, if anything, seems a little minimal.
Right. Well, they're already allocated 1 space. One of their spaces is in the parking calculation. So the expansion just is looking at the allocation of another space.
Right, but as far as a hardship to say they have 5 employees, we should keep it at 1 or reduce it to 0 or something.
Right.
There's no good case for that.
Correct.
Because we've seen the other where there's a big space and there's only 1 person in there doing whatever, but that is not this case. So they need 1 more space, but the property already has 65 allocated and only has 63 to give out. We're already in overtime. So going to 66 allocated for 63 just makes a bad situation worse. This is not new. We've been talking about this for probably 6 months at least, maybe longer, where we've been talking about this very issue with Anthony Reed, with his spaces, that in the event that there's no more parking, we're not going to approve new use permits. That's something the owner of the building has to figure out. They can have less parking intensive uses or a bigger parking lot or a smaller building. That there are lots of ways to deal with it, but simply ignoring the parking requirements is not one of them and would certainly be unfair to every other business in town that's held to the same standard. Okay, I wanted to get the background so we understood what was going on. I don't have any issue with what the Planning Commission is doing. I commend the Planning Commission for doing this. Thoughts from the council?
Yeah. I think the council ought to advise the planning commission to hold off on all of this for right now. And the reason I say that is that I've been dealing, because of the CARES grant stuff, with at least 2 of the applicants, and in some cases 3 of the people who are have facilities at the Clifton House. And as I think we all know, a lot of those facilities are not being used. So we are counting parking spaces that aren't being used because the facility isn't being used, even though you've got square footage. And as Kathy said, we really don't know what's going on with Wheelhouse and Pilates and the restaurant, and they don't know either, because some of them don't know whether they're going to survive. Some of them think they are going to survive, but are going to get much smaller. Some of them are talking about merging. The paper crafts place, I mean, they've got a lot of square footage, but they aren't open. So their parking isn't being used by customers because they don't have customers at the moment. And I think we have to take that into account. I think we have to look at the reality of these businesses trying to survive at the moment, and put our parking regulations for that building in abeyance until we can figure out I mean, I understand we've had a lot of trouble getting cooperation and information from the owner. And I think we have to sit down and deal with that. But as far as the companies that are working in there at the moment, I think we ought to let them continue to work to the
How do we get the owner of that building to come to the table and deal with this?
Well, I think what I'm hearing from Steve is something like, leave the occupants of the building alone. Don't go after them for violations or enforcement, for example, if they don't have a use permit right now. Okay. Just don't worry about it right now. And when the pandemic settles out, the dust will settle here and we'll have a better idea. And at that point, we can look at where we are, pursue enforcement action if it's appropriate at that time, but not do it at this time. That said, we would not, in my view, issue use permits that don't comply with the law at this time. We don't need to do that. We just wouldn't, they know what's going on. They applied, we said no. They know it needs to be looked at, but we just won't vigorously pursue enforcement action at this time, as opposed to in the future, and let the folks do their thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If Anthony Reed was in the 2 suites before the hair business took the 2 spaces that weren't even there, isn't the problem not just with Anthony's business, but also with the hair salon's business that was allocated spaces that didn't exist?
The
Well,
issue,
We thought they existed previously, Marilyn, because we thought the Wheelhouse was leaving. Also, Mr. Reed got the second space quite some time back. Amanda has a better idea of when, but he's been the recipient of numerous letters requesting him to come and get an updated use permit for the expansion over the period of what, Amanda, 6 months, 9 months? Maybe even a year. And at that point, when the letters were initially sent out, Marilyn, you're right, the spaces were there, but you have to apply for the use permit. And if you don't, and someone else comes in and applies for the use permit, we're not going to say, oh, gee, someone else is there, but they haven't applied, but we think they're, you just can't do that. You have to base it on who comes in and applies for a use permit. And he didn't come in until now, after numerous letters over a 6 to 9 period.
if he had chosen to apply earlier when he was asked to do so, it wouldn't be him that's in the situation. It would be
Exactly.
the hair garage. Frankly, to Steve's point, since Anthony's squatting there, if you will, they're both now there. So perhaps the world is a happier place during COVID-19 because the businesses are continuing. But we will have to clean this up at some point, and we do have to send a message to the owner, because this is not a new situation. This situation existed a long time ago, where we've had issues with parking not being kept track of appropriately and questions about it. So there's no action for us to take This is informing us. Is that correct, Kathy?
Well, unless the town council wants to approve the use permit, you certainly can overrule. We make a recommendation. It's up to the town council to decide what to do on the recommendation.
Yes.
But, you know,
Okay.
the reality is that there's a difference between not approving the use permit and saying, oh, we need enforcement action. And I see Steve's point. Mr. Reed's business is already in there. It's been in there for quite some time. However, I wouldn't want to extend it to any other business. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to give the owner or any other business the impression that they're welcome to take over an empty office space there or suite there and not worry about coming in for a use permit because we're not going to do anything for enforcement. You know, because we could just have a mess as this shakes down later on, because there are empty office spaces there. So.
Yeah, this is specific at this time for this particular case. And Mr. Reed is not immune to enforcement action. We will pursue this when the time is right. Just that the point we're at right now at stage 2 of 4 or something like that is not the right time to pursue enforcement action. However, we cannot issue the requested use permit because it doesn't comply with the requirements.
Is he gonna have to file a new application later? Or are we just gonna keep his application pending?
I think he gets 2 years.
Okay.
Right, Amanda?
Wait a
No,
minute.
2 years.
No, Steve, it's only for construction. It doesn't have to do with this.
But
Sorry.
if it's denied anyway right now by the planning commission, which it was, then wouldn't he have to reapply to have it opened?
Well, that's a question. It was not, the planning commission cannot presently recommend approval, okay? They didn't recommend denial. So the council could certainly say, let's affirmatively deny it, or we could just sit on the not presently recommending approval from the planning commission, with the idea being that we're waiting on Clifton House to provide additional information to show how they can meet the parking requirements. So if we don't act on it, it's in effect being held open and held in abeyance.
That's what I wanted to find out. So I'm okay with that as long as he can still operate, to Steve's point, as a business. We're not inhibiting the business from doing business, but we're also, you know, keeping an eye on this and ensuring that once we can get to it, we will get to it. Once it's appropriate to pursue
Yep.
these types of enforcements.
I think that's fair. So we'll look to hear more from the planning commission and with one or two things, either when there's an update from the building owner on what they're doing with parking, or two, when we come out of the pandemic. If this is not cleaned up, then we will deny this and we will start moving, but we don't need to do so right now. Okay. Next.
The next is the planning commission and the mayor have been in discussions with the Department of Environmental Quality of Virginia with respect to certain changes in our zoning ordinance and town practices, which DEQ believes are mandated by state code to our town code chapter 11, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance. So to that end, the planning commission recommends that the town approve the corrective action plan outlined and the proposed zoning changes that were submitted, and move forward with putting forth those ordinance changes for adoption within the prescribed time periods that are set forth in the corrective action plan.
I'll kick the ball off by making a motion to approve the corrective action plan and proposed zoning changes to address the DEQ issues, and to move forward with adopting the ordinance changes.
Second.
Okay, anybody have any questions about this? I think we talked about it before. I mean, DEQ is really awesome, but in case they're not on the call, there's a lot of stuff like yes, your ordinance requires that people do not damage pygmy chickens or something, but you also need to make people write that on the plat, that the ordinance says they can't damage pygmy chickens. Like, okay, we'll do that. It was like they agreed that we were doing everything, but we didn't have an extra thing that said the other people had to write it somewhere else. And then they want us to ask the county to send us information on what the county does for septic tank pump outs, and then have us send it to them. Okay, so
What
you
can
know, yeah, kind of a pain in the rear. I mean, I can kind of get it. And look, I think there are towns around the country where stuff like this is a big deal and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. That isn't us. But we entered into an agreement where we said, sure, we'll do this so we can get on down the road. And part of that, there's a silver lining. Part of that is that we have to do some ordinance changes. We're required to do them in 120 days from the time we sign the agreement. And there are other ordinance changes we wish to make for a variety of different things. So this will give us some impetus to actually collect all those things up
happening right now
and do them. So that's it. That's the background on it. There's honestly nothing magic about it other than we have to run around, collect some stuff and send it to them. But it was the way to get this done and move forward with DEQ. Kathy was kind of hoping we would go into litigation with them over what the rules required, but you know,
Kathy was annoyed.
yes. So, and we had this call where it was me and Kathy and like 8 people from DEQ or something on I don't know, but they're doing their job. They're doing a great work. It's the Commonwealth's really beautiful, and DEQ, we can't say enough good things.
Well,
but
thanks to Bill too, who has patience and deals with regulators and doesn't immediately think, as I do, hey, litigation's a really good answer here and we have a good attorney.
Yes. So
Kathy, is this also the Resource Protection Act stuff in this?
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
And we're sure we have to adopt it.
Well, I mean, Bill was on the call. I frankly don't think we need to, but
yeah, I mean, that goes to it, right? So
truthfully, Pat, the items that we're doing are so limited. Everything we listed on the changes is already actually in our ordinance. All we're agreeing to do now is say the homeowner has to note them on their plat, not just the plan of development, which is actually kind of silly because these aren't new subdivided plats. These are existing plats. So that plat's not even going to be filed anywhere. It's just, hey, when you do a submission, you write down these items on your plan of development, which you do now, like delineate where the RPA is, et cetera. And oh, by the way, you write them on your plat too, your surveyed plat, which is, when you think about it, it's actually pretty innocuous. Has it really substantively changed anything in Chapter 11? The answer is no, nothing.
Yeah, I thought we didn't have to comply with a perennial stream definition for a lot of our small streams through town.
And we don't, and that's not in there. We do not.
that's
That's
not part of it.
No, our definition of what's in RPA is limited to Popeset Creek, period, end of story. And our ordinance specifically says the other streams are not perennial streams.
Oh, perfect. That was my concern, because I know that most of these little creeks beyond our houses are perennial.
Right.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, so I made a motion. Did anybody second it?
Daryl did.
Daryl did, okay. All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, so that carries. So what we need to do, Kathy, we need to have a public hearing for these ordinance changes, but we're probably not ready to schedule it yet.
No, we need to take a look and see at the next planning commission meeting, we'll take a look and see what other ordinance changes we need and want to propose. And of course, welcome ideas, not just for chapter 11, but if you're doing ordinance changes for any
Yeah.
sort of cleanup additions from anybody else on the council or in the town.
Exactly. But one of the things we need to do is sign and return the
You-
agreement itself, right?
Yes, and I think your name is on it, so it looks like that's going to be up to you. So you could just sign it and PDF it. Yes.
Either you or Amanda send me whatever it is you want me
Yes.
to sign.
We'll do
Or
that.
I'll just sign a blank sheet and then you can put the print on that.
No. The corrective action plan, I think, has your signature in blank on it. So we'll just
Yeah.
resend you and you can send it back and I'll forward it to DEQ.
I'll take
Good,
one of those
good.
blank sheets though, Bill.
Yeah, all right. I'll send them
I'm
out to
gonna check.
everybody. But I'll do it in fresh blue ink instead of one that's like PDF. All right, good. What's next?
The last thing is just a matter of information. The Planning Commission has also been moving forward with notifying applicants who have preliminary use permits issued for construction that those use permits will expire after 2 years if construction has not been fully completed, unless the applicant applies for an extension prior to expiration of the permit. So we've been trying to round those up, those who have expired a little bit, are close to expiration, and make sure that that gets done. And the applicants come in and, let us know whether they're even pursuing the use permit, whether the construction's done. So we have a few of them. Amanda has a list. So we've been sending them out and getting responses, and we'll follow up on them.
Okay, and what's the requirement? You tell the applicant, hey, you're coming up on 2 years. Are you still
Right.
pursuing it? Let us know.
What's the status
Okay.
of your construction? Is it complete? We're particularly concerned in those cases, and we do have one, which is over 2 years, where a plan of development was issued. So you're disturbing more than 2,500 square feet of space. So we do want to make sure we follow up on
Okay.
those. They do need a final use permit. Permits need to be reviewed, et cetera. So those are of special concern. But we should do them for all, retaining walls, small little additions and everything.
Yeah, and I do think that the whole COVID thing kind of blew everything up for anybody who was in the middle of or pursuing,
Right.
kind of
And-
threw a monkey wrench in that. So,
And I wouldn't imagine there'd be any difficulty with getting extensions from the town council. I think in
Yep.
some of those cases, it shouldn't be a problem. But it depends, as I say, the ones that require a plan of development, if 2 years has passed, COVID's been here for the last 6 months, but if nothing was done in the preceding 18 months, they may need to come in for a new plan of development. But we'll see. And that's all that was on the Planning Commission agenda.
all right, zoning administrator.
Have an update on Chapel Street, the lot consolidations. I have received written confirmation from the property owner that they're proceeding with the lot consolidation. They've retained an attorney in order to help them through that process. And I've been advised that because of COVID, the time necessary to record the consolidation could take 4 to 6 months. And so I recommend that the town council consider setting a date by which time we would like to just see some documentation that it has actually been filed at the court, not necessarily recorded, which could take months, but the filing itself can be done electronically or through a quick visit to the front desk in the land services department at the court.
All right, I'm obviously very heartened to see that we're making progress and it's moving in the right direction. And there's a written confirmation and a commitment to do the lot consolidation. That's great. The rest should just be implementation. And when I hear it takes 6 months to do, that seems a little odd. But I don't want to put undue pressure on somebody who's trying to do the right thing. And if I didn't hear the 6 months, I wouldn't think twice about it. The county is raring to go on enforcement action on this particular property, and we've told the county to hold off because we believe they're pursuing the lot consolidation, and it sounds like they are, and that's good. Thoughts from council members on actions, if any, here?
I think it's just, I think I agree with the clerk's recommendation. I think it's reasonable to ask that they just let us know once they've filed.
I think Amanda was proposing to give a specific time frame within which it must be done. And presumably the meaning of that is if you don't get it done by then, bad things will happen. As opposed to what you just said, which is something saying confirmed that you are pursuing the lot consolidation. Please provide us written confirmation when it is completed.
The problem
That's
is that back in 2017, we actually reached that same point that we're at right now. But without some sort of timeline to put a limit on it, it's difficult to monitor, and it's difficult to keep track of.
I think it's fair enough to provide some date to show that it's filed by. I mean, that just shows that they're taking action, and then however long it takes for it to be recorded is out of their hands.
Okay, filed within 60 days? Filed within 90 days? You know, the election's coming up and the individuals involved probably have things going on there, but 60 to 90 days does not seem unreasonable by any
The
stretch.
paperwork is all done. It's all ready. All it has to, you can just electronically submit the paperwork through the court's website, right from your own computer.
Are you saying the new deed has been written and completed?
The deed has to be done by the attorney,
Right.
but there's no reason why that would take 90 days.
I understand, but all the paperwork's probably not done. It's probably in process, and then it needs to be done. So we'd be giving them a timeline to complete the filing and let us know. What is that time? I don't think it's 30 days. Thoughts?
I think 60 days is fine to say to the attorney, look, within 60 days, get the deed written and file this thing. We don't, it's entirely possible that there are delays on the county side, but I think Amanda has a point that all we really need to do is see that it's been filed. We know this attorney knows how to do this because he's done it for other properties in town. If it's the same attorney, and I think it is, and telling him to file it within 60 days is a reasonable thing to ask, and to confirm that he's done it. And after that, it's however long the county takes.
And to send a copy to us.
And send a copy to us.
Yes. Okay.
I think 60 is reasonable.
Okay. So you will take care of that as zoning administrator?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay.
My next update is on 7184 Clifton Road. Just to briefly refresh your memory, the last thing that happened was the town sent the property owner / builder a letter giving him a deadline early in August, at which time we wanted him to either remediate the non-approved aspects of the construction or alternatively to file a new application for a certificate of appropriateness for the ARB to consider and the Planning Commission if and where applicable. Although we did not receive anything by that deadline, approximately 10 days later, we did receive a letter from the builder that was pretty detailed in terms of what his intentions are with each of the aspects. I'll just give you a couple examples. The first one would be the unapproved vinyl railings. He has agreed to remove those and replace them with the wooden railings that have been approved by the ARB. There are other things that he would like to bring back to the table with the ARB to seek approval for. It's not guaranteed, but we just at least want him to come back to the ARB and work with them. As far as the Planning Commission is concerned, he has proposed that he regrade the slope in the backyard in order to not be required to have a retaining wall that is of a height where it would need a permit from the county. And we got some helpful feedback from Royce, which is that any proposed grading should be brought back to the Planning Commission for review. So
Will not have land disturbance?
yeah, he already has a plan of development. The plan of development, I think, is from 2015. So it would probably be a good idea to take a look at that and maybe have the town engineer take a look at his proposals to change that plan, basically. And then we can also determine at that time whether or not the front retaining wall is tall enough where it still requires a permit or not. There's some disagreement on that height. I can say that the county has agreed not to issue an occupancy permit until the town has signed off on the entire project. So that is very helpful. And I would recommend that the council consider setting a deadline for these applications to be submitted by the property owner. And keep in mind that we have set several deadlines in the past for the same purpose. They have all ended.
All right, to be specific, when you say applications, you mean an application to the ARB for the design changes and an application to the Planning Commission for the retaining wall use permit approval?
Correct.
Okay. And look, as a backdrop, we've asked this person, property owner, to come in and address these problems. After a lot of foot dragging, he finally came in and in fact responded, and he said, I did this, I did this, I did this. Here's my proposal on what to do with these things. And some of it maybe is reasonable, some of it is not. In one case, he said, yes, I'll replace the plastic porch railing, which was nice. So, definitely progress. However, to get to the next stage, what we actually need is for him to submit an application to the ARB and say, here are the changes that I want you to approve. You previously approved this design, and now I want you to approve the design with these changes. And with a specific application, the ARB can either say, okay, no, got to change that. Okay, no, okay. If they have a specific application. So they're lacking that now. They don't want to get into a trade on this might be okay, that might be okay. It's submit the application to the ARB for the design changes, and we'll let you know. In the same way on the retaining walls, it would be a submittal to the Planning Commission saying, I have new retaining walls here. So that's the path forward. There has been some progress, but now we need specific applications. So that's the direction. The question from the zoning administrator is, what sort of time frame would we give this individual to say, get your application in? They know exactly what the issues are. Royce and Jeff, and I think Amanda have met with the individual in person to walk around and point at the issues. There's no question as to what these are. Now it's time to fish or cut bait and say, I want this change, this change, this change. How much time?
You know, the town council just did this in another context, and I don't see any reason why not to do the same thing here. The only difference is I'm a lawyer, so I know how many days I can say is reasonable to another lawyer. I have no idea of how long it takes to do something like this. So I need some advice from Royce or somebody else to tell me what is the number that we have to pick, and let's vote on it and be done.
And the point is, the action is to submit the application for the design changes, not to actually do the changes, but actually submit the changes.
But presumably they would have to have designed it. That's the issue that I can't.
Yes. Well, and we know what the new design is because all they have to do is take a picture of what they built as opposed to what was approved. But to put that together in the whatever the ARB would like, we can ask Royce if he can tell us what sort of time frame he thinks, to Steve's point, would be appropriate.
Would you like me to chime in?
Yep.
As far as the ARB issues, he could submit that application for this month's meeting. That might be a little close because that gives him 2 weeks. But certainly by October, he could submit that application. The issue with the retaining walls is he's claiming to have an engineer working on a regrading plan that would eliminate the need for a retaining wall that exceeds 36 inches, which is when it triggers the permit requirement. I don't know where he is in that redesign, but it would not be out of line, I don't think, to say that he needs to submit an application for both by the October 15th deadline.
I'm willing to make a motion to that effect.
Okay. Does that mean you're going to make a motion?
Yeah.
Or you?
I'm sorry. I will make a motion that Amanda inform him that the town council has said that we need these applications filed by October 15th.
Okay, I second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I
Opposed? Abstentions? Right. Okay. Good. Onward and upward, making progress.
That's all I have to report.
Okay. And now we'll move to the Architectural Review Board.
The ARB met on August the 27th, and we reviewed three pieces. The easiest one was Motier, which is the new French pastry shop that has been previously approved at the Clifton house, is installing some new mechanical equipment towards the rear of their space. That yard where the equipment would be installed is adjacent to Jim Fullerton's parking lot and behind the garage that's been converted to office space. It's a rather large piece of equipment, so I met with him and his contractor and suggested that he propose a screen fence to take the mechanical equipment out of view from Jim Fullerton's property, which he agreed to do. He submitted an application and the ARB approved the fence as applied. The other two issues both had to do with signage. There's a shocker. Just as a pretext to this, I would imagine the ARB deals with signage 75% of our time, if not more. And most of the signage issues that we deal with are for either approval or complaints or signs that are illegally displayed, most of which have always been with commercial properties. So the first discussion that we had was regarding yard signs / personal message signs that are not currently covered in our town code ordinance. The consensus of the ARB members was to not change the signage section of the town code to allow this type of signage. The current code language limits signage in residential zone properties to address numbers, real estate for sale or for rent signs, and political campaign signs with defined parameters. The ARB would like to continue to minimize potential signage in the residential area to help maintain the character of the residential area. Past examples of yard sign non-compliance with the current code language have mostly been limited to graduation or birth announcements and have met few, if any, complaints from neighbors. This type of signage is usually displayed for a relatively short period of time. If any written complaints for non-compliant signage are received by the ARB believes that the enforcement measures in place are adequate. So basically what we were saying is we didn't want to open up another avenue for additional signage in town. We feel that signage is visual clutter in the historic areas, and we would rather minimize it than have more avenues to display it. Currently, there have been no written complaints for any yard signs in the residential area. And this has been over a period of more than 30 years.
Okay.
So unless there is a written complaint, we would prefer to leave the code language as it is now.
I'm curious how this topic got in front of us if there wasn't any complaints.
There were verbal complaints. I received 3 verbal complaints. One wasn't a complaint. One was a question as to whether a certain sign that's been displayed lately was within the town code.
So it's more of an inquiry than a complaint, I suppose.
They were all inquiries.
Okay.
Another inquiry was a commercial property owner who has been the target of sign complaints in the past, asking why he can't display signs without being harassed, whereas other people can display signs. So those are, walking down the sidewalk or a text message, those sorts of things, no written complaints. If it was a written complaint, the ARB is not the enforcement wing for complaints. I would pass that on to the town council. So what I did was I talked to the people and I told them the first thing that came up was the sign. The latest sign is the "We Believe" sign, and it was discussed as to whether that was a political sign. And I said, if it is, then it does not fall into a category that is approved because it's too early for political signage to be displayed. The council meeting last month talked about the difference between that sign and a political sign, which is a political campaign sign. So we started categorize it as a yard sign or a personal message sign. So to avoid putting yard signs or personal message signs into the code and potentially opening the door to signage wars of sort, or basically more signage. We would rather it not be in the code. If someone wants to put up a sign for graduation, I did this last fall or spring. My son graduated from Virginia Tech. He was not allowed to go through the typical process. So we tried to do a little more than what we would normally do. I've seen Robinson signs when seniors are graduating. I've seen balloons and a sign, it's a boy. Those are the kind of signs that meet little or no obstacle at all. And since there has been no written complaint, I would say that there's been no complaint. There's been discussion or inquiries. So the ARB felt that it was best to leave it as that. And if in the future things escalated to a point where there was a written complaint, then we can deal with that at that point. The next discussion had to do with the political campaign signs and the idea of extending the length of time that political signs can be displayed per the town code. The consensus of the ARB members is to not change the length of the time political campaign signs can be displayed as defined in the signage section of the town code. The current time of 60 days prior to an election allows signage to be displayed 15 days prior to the early election date. Right now, the election is scheduled for November the 4th. If you back up 60 days, that would be September the 4th, or actually the 3rd or 5th. It's one of those days. And the early election date is September 18th. So with the current code, signage can be displayed 14 days prior to the early election date. The ARB felt like that was adequate time prior to even the early election date. And once again, in the atmosphere of minimizing signage in the town and the visual clutter, we would like to leave that language as it is. The ARB would like the wording of the code to further describe political campaign signs, to better define and only include signage that's directly related to specific candidates or referendums on the election ballot. Therefore, removing the potential for political movements or things of that nature. But it's more of a sign that says, you know, I'm supporting this person for president, or this referendum, or this whatever is on the actual ballot, whether it be a national, state, or local election, and hopefully avoid having confusion that it could be any campaign, whether it's on the ballot or not.
Okay, thank you. One note, we talked earlier about we have to make some ordinance changes because of this DEQ, and that requires a public hearing and advertising and a bunch of process. There will be a number of other cleanup changes that we'll do. Royce just talked about one that the ARB would like to propose. Ultimately, those are things that the council has to say, we'll approve this for advertising and schedule a public hearing for it. So it will come through us. And related changes that we'd looked at in the past and Amanda had put together is a schedule of civil fines for violations and non-conformances with the code. And what Amanda did was look at other jurisdictions in Fairfax County, town of Vienna, town of Herndon, who have in their code 2-3 page set of fines. You know, for violation of blah, the fine is $100 per day of the violation. There it is, and it's in the code. And then if we wish to levy a fine on someone for a violation, if we find the violation, we then have the direct authority to levy the fine. We can always waive the fines later, but we'd have the authority to do so, whereas now it's a rather cumbersome process to actually levy a fine because there are no specific amounts stated. That's one of the things that we would plan to bring up, perhaps at the next meeting, a schedule of fines based on the town of Herndon's schedule and others that we looked at. So just letting people know one of the things that would be coming that relates to all of this zoning administrator, zoning enforcement, and ordinance changes. Okay, we're ready to move to the next item, which is the review and update of the town committee list. The very long list. It's got, I don't know, 20 different committees. I think what I would ask is, we've got a list, it's got names filled in. If there's anything in particular that needs to be addressed or needs to be changed, I'd like to address it on that basis. We can always revise it. The stuff we had to do, having the ARB, having a clerk, having a treasurer, we've done all that. So this is all things that we'd like to change. Every year we slavishly go through this. In past years, it's been an hour-long slog of reading names. I don't really want to do that. But if there are specific things that need to be changed, we should talk about that. You know, anybody that needs to be added, anybody who is no longer in the area or something like that. And those kind of changes we have been making as we went along. So I don't open it up to any thing that anyone sees that needs to be changed.
At the bottom of page 2, you'll see the box that has the Town Parks Committee. And recently the Anton family moved and another family has moved in there. So I was wondering if we should just automatically add them.
Well, it says adjacent property owners, 1 resident vote per parcel. So I would assume that would be an automatic add because they're an adjacent property owner.
You could say no, I guess, but we should invite them to join.
Yeah. Okay.
I know the meetings are very frequent for that committee and quite cumbersome, so.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite an ask. It's quite a burden. Okay.
Does
Anything?
that list, I'm sorry to interrupt, but does the rest of that list look complete and up to date? I'm not familiar with all the names on that list. Just the Town Parks Committee section, that is.
There is another property up on Chestnut. I don't think it's represented.
You're talking about the Bennetts.
Yeah, that would be one that I'm mentally kind of going around the perimeter.
But that's about it. The new people, the Bennetts, you could certainly ask them if they wish to be on the town park committee.
Sure.
Jennifer Heilman, is she left over here from prior list?
Probably.
Might have been the council member rep.
It's possible.
Right.
We should confirm with her whether she wants to do that. She has stepped up for zoning again, though, right?
She doesn't live on the park.
I mean, she's on the planning commission now, but
Planning, yeah. She may decline.
Well, you can ask her. You can say, look, your name's on here. Weren't sure if that was an artifact from a previous list or
got it.
whatever. Okay. I don't see anything else
Well,
jumping
you'll have
out.
to replace the committees that I'm on, but of course, well, I would recommend that you wait until after October's meeting with the new person to be able to, allow them also to have input as to what they would like to join or not.
That's true enough. There's so let's just run through that so people are aware of it. One is, are you on the planning commission?
Yes,
Okay, so planning commission.
and the
Somebody's-
cigarette tax board.
Yeah, VML, so planning commission, that's a big one. One of the members of the council will need to be on the planning commission and take Melissa's place. We don't have to decide today, but we will next month. The VML liaison, and that's more than that. Melissa's doing a great job with that, is someone has to actually talk to our insurer. Virginia Municipal League, they do a great job with the insurance, but somebody has to actually talk to them every.
Be the point of contact.
Cigarette tax board, I don't know how lively that is, but it is a thing. You're the parking and traffic committee person as well. And the homes tour. Okay. So we're gonna need somebody for, to me, the biggest ones really are the planning commission and VML. We really need somebody to step up and step into those roles. The cigarette tax board fits with VML. It's something, Melissa, that's not a big, intense thing, is it?
It's not much commitment at all.
Yeah. But when the calls come in, we need to have somebody who's the point of contact. So not a big demand, kind of goes like with VML. And then parking and traffic committee, whoever's excited about that.
You can put me down on that one. I don't have the list in front of me, but I was on the parking committee for a while, so you can just put me down now.
I also think you might want to wait until October for these positions, just because you will have a new member that might like to have, roles to participate in, since all the other ones have been delegated except mine at that point.
But I'm penciling Steve in on that, which we can confirm later. Because my fear is not that we'll have so many people who want to do it that we're gonna have to like do paper, rock, scissors, but that we won't have enough people.
Everybody.
Yes.
Amanda, Jennifer Heilman confirms that she'll serve on planning commission only. So I think she's under environment as well as parks.
Why
Okay,
parks? Why? Parks?
okay, so remove Jennifer from everything except for the planning commission.
Correct.
Got it.
Why is Jeffrey? I have a question. How do I have a question? Stop
We
video.
can hear you, Donna.
Okay, I'm not sure. This is all new to me. How is Jennifer on the parks when we are usually defined by the people who share the park parameters?
The holdover
was
from
not.
town council.
She's not. She was an interloper apparently, but that is all behind us now. So she's not.
I'm happy to have Jennifer's help. I just didn't know whether she
Oh.
understood. Yeah. Is she on the parks or not on the parks?
Not.
She is not.
Okay. And we removed the Antons. I've already talked to the lovely new family in the Anton house, and they're already been working on park projects. The Bennett family, I'm sure I know I'm on Zoom, but I don't think that they are really up to the task of being part of the Parks Committee. They have a lot of personal challenges and they've never been included. I can ask them, but I'm not comfortable with it.
Well, to be sure, if they want to join, they're,
Right.
they're welcome to
Of
join.
course, but
But
I don't
they're
even,
not-
I mean,
They're not obligated. They're not obligated to
all right,
join.
I
so-
will make the thing. This is all new. Okay. They've never really, I mean, they don't really, I guess they do ring the park with the
Mhm.
chain link fence. Yeah, okay.
Donna, if you're not comfortable reaching out to them, I can. I have had communication with them. Not
Yeah,
too
same here.
far back
I
in
don't
the
have any
past,
problem
so-
reaching out. I met with
Yeah,
John.
whatever. I just want to say that Mr. Bennett was taken to the hospital this past week in the ambulance, so I don't know what their situation is right now.
We're just letting them know we love them and the opportunity is available without.
Great.
option.
Make
So
my job easier. Okay, great. I can reach out. I live 2 doors down. I will walk up and see how Joan and them are doing. I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay, are we good now for the town list, and we'll revisit the Melissa things we discussed next month? Okay?
We
Good?
need a motion or?
No?
Good.
Since we're not doing anything other than moving along. All right, we're on to unfinished business, native species, natural landscaping, resolution for town controlled properties. We have speakers if they'd like to speak and tell us all about it. Go ahead.
The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to push this initiative again. I forwarded you all the documents that Mayor Holloway requested. I wasn't sure if anyone has any questions.
I will have questions when we get to what do we do with it. That'll be, well, let me just be specific.
Sure.
The documents that were sent out is the amendment to the comprehensive plan of the county, and it has a bunch of different things in it. Site facilities are appropriate to the area they're intended to serve, reduce service area overlap between, a lot of stuff that just doesn't apply.
Right.
And then the native species natural landscaping was an addition. Objective 6, and you can see it in the red line. Well, Objective 6, okay, is what we're talking about. So I wanted to be clear that what we'd be talking about is what's down here as Objective 6, design, retrofit, and maintain public facilities. That's not really right. It'd be sites, okay, in an environmentally sensitive manner. And that's what we'd be adopting is the red line material in here. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what document you're looking at, but I sent you the policy plan amendment, and I was looking at the definition of natural landscaping.
Well, in the amendment, the document you sent is the amendment, and the amendment is actually shown by what's called a red line, where it's underlined and it says, here's what's new.
Right.
Because when I got it, I was like, what is all this? And then it said, to identify changes from the previously adopted plan, text which has been added is shown as underlined. And when you get to page 3 and 4, there's underlined material.
Correct.
So there's a definition of natural landscaping, but the definition is implemented by policy A and policy B, policy A, B, C, and D. So are you proposing we would adopt policy A, 6A, B, C, and D, as well as the definition, or just the definition?
Just adopt natural landscaping.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that's easy. That takes care of my problem, because one of my concerns was there's a new policy about green building practices when we build anything in buildings and structures. That's different. Okay,
No, all I was asking was just that we, moving forward, we use native plants as much as possible.
Can we ask you, Laura, to draft a proposed resolution for next month? I mean, you know, the 6 pages and the red lines and all the other stuff, clearly a lot of it does not apply to us. So whatever it is that you're specifically wanting us to do, it'd be really helpful if there was a simple 2-paragraph or 1 sentence that we could adopt.
Thanks. You're
I
right.
think we would adopt it, but you know.
yeah, so it says natural landscaping, a landscaping approach, da, 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 da. And related to that would be something that says, like what the county's got is they'll use natural landscaping in certain things, like when they do new landscaping work on county property. When they replace existing landscaping on county property, they will use natural landscaping. That's kind of it in a nutshell. But then you know what it is you're saying you will do. Apply natural landscaping, da 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 da. So it could be literally like 1 sentence or something. It says, applied natural landscaping to new landscaping and replacement of existing landscaping on town-owned and controlled properties. Right?
Sounds
Steve?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, question about that too. How does that actually work then? Say we wanted to re-landscape a piece of the park. Do we then have to hire somebody that understands what natural landscaping is to come up with an appropriate plan that meets that industry term? Because there was no real definition or detail in what you sent over. So I don't really know what we're adopting.
Well, I've been doing the planting up until the last year. And anytime that we've had anything done, you know, I've volunteered a number of hours anytime that, you know, a project has come up and given my opinion.
But we need to find somebody that knows this industry, right then, Laura? I mean, it's not something that we call Betty's and say, send over native
No.
land.
No, you wouldn't call them. No, I mean, this is part of what I do though.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I think for a specific example, we're talking about potentially replacing the tree in Air Square, right? So
Right.
like,
And I've
when-
already been down the road with that before. Yeah,
so like that's an example of when we would
correct.
be doing a major change and we'd want to make sure that it's native landscaping that we use to replace it.
Correct.
So the resolution that you're looking for is simply a statement that the town council intends to see to whatever it is in terms of natural landscaping. And how we do that, to Pat's point, is we find somebody who knows what they're talking about, i.e. for the moment, you. But
Correct.
yeah, but if you're not here 10 years from now, we need a generalized statement that says it's our intention to do the following.
Right. As opposed to it's required and we must hire people to study it and make
Yeah.
determinations. Yeah.
Uh,
It's our intent to use natural landscaping on town-owned and controlled
It
property.
would be very similar to when we've adopted the resolution to support Pollinator Week. It's
Okay, but to Steve's point, it's an intent.
correct.
Okay, very good. All right, so you know what to do and we'll look for that down the road. But I didn't hear anybody who was opposed to the concept of natural landscaping. And let me point out so people know what that means is when we put in new landscaping and a new landscaping plan, or we pull stuff out and we're going to put in replacement stuff, we're going to have to look at the approved list of native plants and natural landscaping And that's what we get to choose from. And it might be stuff that's beautiful in the eye of the beholder, for all I know. But that's what we're signing up to do. There's a list of stuff, and we're using that stuff.
Well, and we also would have to inform, for instance, the people who are working on the streetscape, that if they're going to put stuff in the things that they've.
That's actually already part of the streetscape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's key. It's a key item. You know, we would have done it for the triangle, anything that we do in Air Square, the planter boxes by the railroad tracks, just trying to do things. And it's generally less maintenance because it's things that survive around here and are overall beneficial. So.
Right. So when we have people proposing to plant new Japanese maples or whatever it is, you know, we probably wouldn't be doing that. It'll be the approved list, which is a good thing. Birds and bees and insects love them. I understand. So it's all for the good, but so people know we're not just saying we intend, we're actually going to be doing this. And part of it will be encouraging private citizens in town to remove all of their plantings as well and replace them with these new superior plantings. Or to set an example of the types of things that, you know, bees and birds and butterflies love. So this is an actual intent to do something. It will give us handcuffs and, you know, tie our hands as to what we can do, but we're doing it knowingly because we think it's good and good for the environment. And as Laura and Reagan were saying, we've already been moving in this direction. This would just solidify that by saying that it's our intent going forward. Okay. Next, the exciting safety grant. Come on, tell us all about it, Melissa.
So through VERSA, which is the shared insurance plan that government in Virginia participates in, I was able to apply for a safety grant with the idea that it has to be used for things such as mulch for the playground, you know, so children aren't injured, or handrails at the town hall or something like that. But because of COVID, we can also use it for safety items related to that. And one of the ideas I had that I wanted to run past the council was, you know, we don't have anywhere in town, you know, that has hand sanitizer besides if you go into shops or something. So just an idea, because I saw it in Vienna where they have hand sanitizing stations. So maybe one at the children's park and one at Air Square. That, of course, these would be permanent, you know, fixtures. And then, you know, we would have the supplies to refill them as necessary, because, I mean, even if it wasn't COVID right now, you know, with little kids and stuff and ice cream, it's not a bad idea. But honestly, it has to be, we have to provide the receipts by the end of November. So there's not a lot of time to come up with what we would like to spend this $500 on, and $500 doesn't go that far. But I think we should take advantage of it immediately and, you know, and get a plan together to use this money so we don't lose the money.
So the short version is they told us we can have $500. The way it works is we spend the $500 and then they pay us back. We can spend more than $500, but they'll only give us $500 back.
Right.
If we wish to get the $500, we have to have qualifying expenditures. Melissa just talked about what those would be. And we have to send in our receipts, invoices, whatever, before November 30th of 2020. Proof of purchase and box tops must arrive by November 30th, 2020. Okay.
Yep.
So here's the thing. Melissa's psyched about the sanitizer station in Children's Park. Cool idea for sure. But somebody would need to take that on. And it wouldn't be buy some bottles and stick them on the tables. It would be stick something in the ground, dig a hole, put some cement in there, put a post in there, put a little guy on it. Royce might tell us the ARB has to look at the sanitizing station. I don't know. But somebody would have to take that on as their project because they want to do it and they care about it and get it done in order for us to meet this deadline and qualify. So don't know who that is, who would want to do it. Thoughts? And if we don't do it, we won't get the $500 reimbursement. So it's not like we have $500, we have to send it back or whatever. It's available to us.
I mean, it would be a shame to lose it.
Agreed.
If nobody steps up to, you know, for the hand sanitizer, or doesn't like that idea. I mean, we can always use more mulch to pad, you know, the children's playground too. And we do typically buy that on regular intervals. It's just, we have an opportunity right now, and that is in the budget already for things like that. But we have an opportunity right now to have this, you know, for COVID, but ongoing, it's not a bad idea anyway in those two places. But it would have to be somebody stepping up since I'm stepping down.
Well, I think just an idea that hasn't been mentioned yet, but if we're talking about potentially returning to the town hall for meetings soon, I think hand sanitizer stations at the town hall would be required if we're going to have the public in there for meetings, et cetera. And that might be an easier lift.
Well, we'd be there to manage just pump jars there, like, you know what I mean? Like nobody's going to walk away coming to the town hall meeting with a giant thing of hand sanitizer, whereas putting it out at the park or Air Square for the public to use on a regular basis.
I'm not arguing that putting one in the park is probably a better idea. I'm not hearing a lot of people jump up and down saying they want to do it. So
yeah.
Well, how to maintain it is the key. I think Vienna has public works staff. I mean, they have public safety, they have everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody volunteering to go over there and refill that thing every day or every week,
I think
which I
it's,
think would fall apart pretty quick.
yeah, I think Reagan's right. I think it's also an attractive nuisance in terms of inviting people to knock it over, break it, do whatever they want to do with it. Then we have repair costs, and it goes on and on and on. However, I think what Daryl just said is absolutely right. We're going to have these types of dispensers in the meeting hall, and at least that we can protect. And we have somebody who cleans in the meeting hall, who can fill the bottles and so on. I'd be very worried about starting to put more posts and more facilities in the parks that we then would have to maintain.
I like the mulch idea though. That's
I do.
something to do.
Yeah.
Even though it's budgeted, it still frees up funding for something else. And it's what's a one and done, no maintenance. Trying to think if there's any other things like that are quick wins.
Well,
Well,
it's
some
still-
of the counties are doing, and towns are doing mask dispensers as well.
I was thinking of that for town hall in the event that somebody shows up that forgets.
Yep.
Not a huge supply, but enough to get you by for a
I mean,
meeting.
I wrote the grant with masks as one of the items that we would procure. So that, I mean, that's an easy buy too. So yeah, you could, I mean, you just have to decide, and somebody has to kind of lead the effort to purchase the hand sanitizer if you would like to use that at the town hall, and boxes of masks or whatever. It just keep in mind, it has to be, receipts have to be provided by the end of November or we lose it. And that would be a shame because, I mean, it's $500 that, be it mulch, be it hand sanitizer, be it whatever, that I think the town could use.
Well, it sounds like we're hearing sanitizer and masks.
And
or
mulch.
Probably not and mulch for $500. I think the mulch is a multi-$1,000 kind of thing.
It usually is, and we don't buy it every year for the park because it's
Right.
not necessarily, we go and we kind of rake it up and fluff it up, if you will, under the swings and so forth. And I'm not sure we need it right now, but
Yeah, we can just get a fluffer for that.
last time we got a bunch of teenagers to help us rake it up.
So maybe
These are the same kind of costs also that would be covered by the CARES funding that we have, which is also supposed to be spent at the end of November.
I like the sanitizer stations, masks, that's something we're gonna want. So who can look into that? for the community hall.
I'm trying to recover my login for Guernsey right now. So that's our supply distributor. So I'm sure they have dispensers and supplies and stuff that we can purchase. So I will
Do you
get that
want to
information.
report? You want to report back at the next meeting with,
I can do that.
something on that? Because that, if they got a couple standalone boom things and some refill jugs and boxes of masks, that would be a good thing. We'll need that. This $500 would be very, very helpful, and it will take away any sort of hurdle to having this important safety equipment. Okay, very good. Let us know. Melissa, thank you for taking the initiative to get this grant, because it wouldn't have happened without you.
No problem.
Additional compensation for staff for COVID-19 related work as this continues to move forward. Let me tell you what the plan is here as it's developing. Both our clerk and our treasurer, both individuals, are working significant extra hours on COVID related things that are not clerk scope and not treasurer scope. Amanda has been keeping track of things that she's been doing and how many hours going back to March on work that relates to COVID that would not have been done but for the pandemic. Okay, so clear, 3.1 hours for this, 3.8 hours for this, 0.9 hours for this. So you can clearly track and compare and say, if it wasn't for the pandemic, this would not have been done. Okay, so that's the idea. And then what we'd like to do is provide some additional compensation for that work. And that entails having track of hours. Because if the idea is you work 40 hours a week, and instead of doing these following study projects, you're now doing this instead. So your work scope hasn't changed. But you'd like more money. The county doesn't look on that favorably. The federal government doesn't look on that favorably. But if you're doing the job you did before and continuing to do it, but now you're doing extra work you didn't have to do before and isn't part of your actual job scope that's related to COVID-19, and we can track it, then we can compensate that, and we can seek to recover that as part of our COVID funding. But obviously, you can see all the pitfalls with that. It has to be documented. So we've got documented hours that Amanda's worked. Marilyn's going to work on this as well. Marilyn has regular meetings with the county on the whole CARES Act thing. So we know there's time being spent that would never have been spent, but for this, that's extra and additional. So there will be hours. Now we can do one of two things, which is just say, all right, they're doing this in addition in their roles, or we can assign them roles as the town COVID-19 administrator and the town COVID-19 financial administrator. So they have a new role with a new title that'll be temporary, and they will have these hours associated with the work as the town COVID-19 administrator and the town COVID-19 financial administrator, hours booked under them. Okay. And the other piece is, okay, cool. How many dollars per hour? That's where the mystery comes in. And you'd like it if the Fed said, oh, we'll use this, you're good to go. Well, not so much. Okay. So I asked our town attorney about this. She said she had some ideas. What she came back with was, well, if you can look at exactly how many hours you work in the regular job and the overall pay you get for the regular job, then you can figure out an average hourly rate for all of your staff together. and determine that hourly rate, which would be a reasonable proxy to use for these additional hours. I get the idea, but then somebody has to actually do that. And we could do that, believe me, we could do that. The other possibility is to pick a number like $25 an hour that we would feel is something no one's going to go, oh no, oh come on, what do you mean? It would be a number like that's what we pay the person who cleans the community hall, $25 an hour. And it would seem to me that a number like that would certainly be justifiable for a town COVID-19 administrator and account, town COVID-19 financial administrator. As you go up from there, if you say it's $1,000 an hour, the feds are going to go, I don't think so, not going to recover that. $100 an hour, probably the same. So you can see where you come down. Can we get a number where we go, that number we're comfortable with? And then you take the hours, you multiply it times the number, and away you go. Or we do this analysis over the last few years and we look at actual hours worked against total comp and see if we can figure out a number and use that number. Two methodologies. I will note that between March and June, Amanda has logged 66 additional hours. So that's not July and not August. That's just March through June, March, April, May, June. 66 additional hours. If that was at $25 an hour, it'd be approximately $1,650. If it's at $50 an hour, that's $3,300. Okay. If that's for 4 months, there's another 2 months. That's another either 800 or 1,600. So you're up to either $4,000 or $6,000. And then you go September, October, November, another 3 months. You might have another. You'd be up to $9,000 or $10,000 versus or $4,000 or $5,000. Okay, so just to give you an idea. So that's the concept. We don't have to do any of it. However, it's certainly been the case that our staff members have been working very hard, much harder on things that clearly only relate to COVID. And we'd like to recognize that. And we'd like to provide some additional compensation. We'd certainly like to do it in a way that perhaps can make use of some of the funding that we have as well, particularly in a time when revenues are down. So we want to be thoughtful about it. So that's the idea. Thoughts, council member?
I think we ought to pay them because they're working. I think we ought to pay them as much as we can within the context of the amount of money we have in the COVID fund, which is limited. So I think you have to calculate that out and see how close you can come to zeroing out the amount of money we've got.
Okay.
I would agree. It would seem like a straight time rate would be fair if we can get to that relatively quickly.
I agree.
Okay. All right. And Marilyn, you said earlier we had about $8,300 left of our allocation. We looked at the possibility of returning about $1,400 of that. In this case, we might not do that. And we'll probably have some additional attorney things to chew it up and Zoom payments as well. So there might be $6,000, $7,000 here. There's certainly not more than $8,000 here. We have to figure out about that. And we need Amanda's tracking hours that relate to COVID, which obviously we have to look at, scrub and go, are they legitimate? But I've looked at them. I know what the work is. and Maryland would have to do the same thing. And then we would take that with some sort of a straight time number and put them together. Obviously, it's what, September. We've got October, the month of September, the month of October, the month of November. Our deal with the county says anything we haven't spent by November 30th, we have to give back. So we're gonna have to figure that out somehow. But we don't have all the data now to be able to make the final tabulation. But we can certainly by October have information to be able to make a good part of that. And I'll need information from Marilyn and continuing information from Amanda to be able to do that.
Let me clarify that, Bill. The money that we received can be spent through December. It's expenses through December. But we have to, I know this is stupid, but we have to show the expenses by the end of November.
Yeah.
So if we calculated the average hourly expenditure of time of the two folks, we can pay them for December, even though we account for it in November. You follow that? I know it's crazy. I mean, we have this with all care grants too.
The harder part for me, December is a little bit of a, it is what it is, but November, by November 30th, we'll know, assuming Amanda and Marilyn are actually keeping track of it, we'll know hours worked in November.
Oh, yeah.
But what we won't have is a council meeting on November 29th or November 30th to figure out what to do with it. Although at the November meeting, we could say, and all hours worked, in November, da, 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 da. So yeah, we can do that. I think December will be harder.
I think what Fairfax County expects us to do is to, in November, say, we are expending this amount of money, including these bills that we anticipate we will get in December. So we can spend it to the end of the year, but we have to show them the bills by the end of November.
Okay, and it could be, given the amount of money, we'll be
Won't be a big
kind of be at the end of that anyway. Okay, well, that's the plan. And next month, I think we would actually take formal action to begin. I don't see any reason, if we've got accumulated hours, we wouldn't go ahead and approve and authorize distribution of funds next month. But we don't have all of the information now. But on the idea, any other comments? Seems like everybody's on board. Okay, good. All right. Okay, on to new business. Vacancy on town council. Melissa, you wanna say anything?
I mean, I guess this serves as public notice that I am resigning my position on the town council. And I would just like to take the opportunity to say thank you to the town and for the honor and the privilege to have served. And also to have worked with all of you who I just feel like we've had a very strong team, and we've gotten a lot of things accomplished, and everybody just has strengths that we've been able to capitalize on, and it's just a really strong council right now, and I'm sad to be going, but also very optimistic for all the great work you guys are doing and will continue to do. And I won't be that far away from the town, and I can join on Zoom still, right?
Absolutely, anytime. You can even register to speak and just say hi and give us an update on what you're doing under citizens' remarks. And certainly, you've done a fantastic job on the council. We've been thrilled to have you. It's been a true pleasure. You've got flair and style, brilliant ideas. You've got strong views, not a shrinking violet when you have ideas and you feel strong about them. And that's important because people should have a voice here, but also respectful and professional and willing to listen to people and open-minded, all the kind of qualities that really serve our citizens tremendously well. So we're definitely going to miss you
Thank
on the council. And I would note that you're resigning because you're moving to
Yeah.
another. It's not you resigning because you don't love us anymore.
No, I would never resign midstream after having been elected, but I am moving, and I think the town would be obviously better served by somebody who still lives in the town and, you know, in the day-to-day operations of the town. So yeah, I'm sure that my replacement will, whoever that may be, will step up and do a great job.
Excellent. Well, we will miss you, but as we move forward under the town's charter, so that everyone's aware, the way the process works, and we've gone through this before, it happens from time to time. The way the process works is any vacant council seat is filled by a vote of the remaining members of the council. And it's filled with an individual that is a qualified voter in the town. So in other words, it has to be somebody who would be qualified to actually run for the election in the first place if there was an election. This is an appointment. So it can't be somebody from Springfield or Maryland or whatever. It has to be somebody who is a resident of the town and is eligible as a voter here in town, because those are the same eligibility requirements. But from any of those people, the council can choose someone. The charter says that we are to choose within 30 days. I've had people ask, oh my goodness, what happens, da 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 da. Well, let me give you a hypothetical. No one's interested, hypothetically. Okay, if no one's interested, we don't have to go like just pick somebody by spinning a wheel and go, sorry, I know you're not interested, you're on the council.
Like jury duty.
Yeah, obviously there's some flexibility. But what we've done in the past that's been successful, and what we're going to do tonight, is to let people know that there is a vacancy and send out a request for applicants. Anyone who is interested in being on the council, and that means fulfilling the remainder of Melissa's term, okay? You don't have to run for election and put your name in and fill out the forms and all the other stuff, but wants to fulfill the rest of Melissa's term on the council should submit a statement of interest and qualifications to the clerk that will be distributed to the council members, or it could just be sent directly to the council members and the clerk. That's fine as well. But submit a statement of interest and qualifications. I am interested in fulfilling Melissa's term, and I have the following qualifications. Here's why I'm the right person for the job. People who don't submit statements of interest won't be considered, because I don't want to pick somebody who isn't interested in doing it. So if you're interested, put in a statement of interest and qualifications. It can be 2 paragraphs long. Doesn't have to be lengthy. It can be 200 pages if you want. Might be hard to read. Depends. If you got a lot of qualifications, or some people just, aren't that qualified, so maybe it's short. It depends on the individual, but it could be short, but very meaningful as well. So it's up to you. You send it in. Last time we did this, we had 3 people who submitted a statement of interest and qualifications. We talked to all of them. We selected one of them that turned out to be a bit of a disappointment, but she's leaving us tonight, so we're kind of going to be on.
It all works out in the end.
Yes. So yes, the last time around we went through this, we selected Melissa to be on the council. There were 2 other people. We said, sorry, there's only 1 seat, not 3. Otherwise, we'd love to have you guys, but we've only got 1. Of those other 2, one of them ran for council the next time around and was elected to the council. That was fantastic. And the other one went on to run terrific charity organizations. So, you know, there's room for everybody. If you're interested, let us know. The longer the list, the better. And I'm going to ask our clerk to send a notice out to the lengthy list we have of people we send out notices about the meeting, to let people know we have a vacancy, and to ask anyone who's interested, who's qualified, to submit a statement of interest and qualifications. And then at the October meeting, we will address the issue, and assuming there's a qualified candidate or candidates, we will select someone to fulfill the vacant position. Any thoughts, council members?
Just a question. When does the vacancy start? I mean, when does we have 30 days from the time of the vacancy. We know that Melissa is leaving, but is the vacancy starting in October, or is the vacancy from October? Then we have 30 days. When is the vacancy?
Well, to be clear, the vacancy starts when there's a vacancy and when the position is vacant. So it's a fact-specific inquiry. So really what I would say is Melissa could send something to us saying, I hereby am resigning from the council effective September 15th, September 10th, whatever. And that would establish the date of the vacancy, and then it would be 30 days from that.
Within 30 days from that date.
Yes, and again, if that doesn't happen, they don't send people from Richmond to take us away or whatever. So it's not that sort of thing. But rather, to Steve's point, I would say 30 days would go from, if Melissa would like to, sends us a short thing saying, wanted to notify the council members that I am resigning my seat effective insert date here. And we'll go from there. Okay, but I know, Melissa, I know that soon, and you are not planning to be here at the October meeting, correct?
Right, but October 6th is the next meeting, so I just want to make sure that, you know, there's 30 days for you from the point I resign and until you can fill that seat on October 6th.
Right. Right, so if it's September 15th or something, that would be fine. Does that work for you?
Yep.
All right, make it so. All right, very good. And look, I hope we get a lot of people, both youthful and experienced, of all various backgrounds and interests. Been here a long time, been here a short time. The more people we have that are interested, I think as people watch these Zoom meetings, they're going to go, wow, I want to be part of that. So, you know, I hope that's the kind of enthusiasm that we're building. And particularly as the meetings take a really long time, people like that, if they're training for a marathon or something like that, it's excellent training for that. So that's vacancy. Next, oh, there we go. Peter Noonan's still around, but we're not ready for him yet. Okay. B, renaming the town park Harriet and William Harris Park. Begin discussion. So let me explain what's going on with that for those of you who don't know and haven't heard either on the council. I'm sure everybody's heard something about it, or in YouTube land or whatever, you know, as to what is going on here. So we have a town park. It goes by 2 exciting names. One is Clifton Town Park. That's what's on the sign. very personal, very exciting. And the the second one is Children's Park. Okay, so there's the background is that the town of Clifton was founded in 1868 after the Civil War. The land on which the town of Clifton was founded, which is the land south of the railroad tracks where the pub is, and Horse Hippie and Bellagio, the caboose, all that kind of stuff, where all of that land is, where that is located, is land that was part of a 1,200 acre plantation that ran from here up towards Centerville. And the owner of the plantation, who passed away in 1863, left all of the land south of the railroad tracks, about 200 acres, to his formerly enslaved people. He had 16 then enslaved people who he freed as part of his will. So imagine in 1863 in Virginia, you had a landowner who freed his people. 16 people, formerly enslaved people, were freed, and those 16 people received the 200 acres south of the tracks. That was then split up, and there was a tract of 77 acres that is mostly west of Main Street, but includes where Buckley Store, Bellagio, where the depot was, where the caboose is, where the pub is, was all part of this 77 acres, including the Primitive Baptist Church, including the town park. That 77 acres was given to a woman named Harriet Harris and her 7 children, who were 8 of the 16 formerly enslaved people. Harriet was married to a guy named William. That's why her last name is Harris. So William Harris married Harriet Elsie, who became Harriet and William Harris. They owned that property, and in the 1868 to 1872 timeframe, which you'll know, Clifton, 1868, in that time frame, William and Harriet subdivided and sold off many of the lots that are what we know of as downtown Clifton today, where Peterson's is, where the pub is, again, where the Buckley Store is. These things were sold off. And then the Harris family lived there for 25 years in the house that Mark and Mona Harrington live in today. That was the house that William and Harriet and their children lived in. As their children grew up, after I think 25 years later, they got sideways with one of their children, Why do I know all this? Because I've gone through all the chancery records with Margot Khosravi, who's been looking at this for 15 years and doing research. Why are we talking about this? Well, get this. You've heard of Chapel Street? Goes down to that place at the end where the stuff collects that they take out in the truck. Chapel Street was originally called Harris Street because the Harrises lived there. At some time during the 60s, I think them and their descendants had moved away and they changed the name to Chapel Street. So a couple months ago, it was brought to my attention by Margot Khosravi, who's our great historian in town, part of our history committee, has been working on this as her passion for literally for decades. Said to me out of the blue, you know, one thing I've always wanted to do is change Chapel Street back to Harris Street. And it's like, what are you talking about? I got the whole story I just told you. The Harrises, the 77 acres, the park, the house, all that stuff. Change it to Harris Street. Like, well, I don't know. That might be kind of tough. We should look into that. So we had a dinner with a few of us, and we invited Vern and Ginny Keene, who live on the park and have lived there for many years. We said, what do you think of this? They're like, hey, Harris is cool, love it. Renaming the street we live on? And our driver's licenses and our mortgage, yeah, we're not keen on that. That sounds really painful. Don't want to do that. But Ginny said, what about renaming the town park from the exciting name of Clifton Town Park to something like Harriet and William Harris Park? What about that? The town can do that. You don't have to get involved. Nobody's driver's license changed. And momentum started for that, and we started to circulate that idea. The Racial Justice Committee's gotten involved to get, their thoughts and their reflections on it as well, and really wanted to do the digging into the history and make sure we had the history right, because this, unlike our banner, okay, this is something that would be permanent, would be there for a long time. So it's important. We don't want to just do it like that, but rather think it through, give people an opportunity to weigh in on it. But the idea would be to rename the park from Clifton Town Park to Harriet and William Harris Park. One of the points of why not just call it Harris Park? Well, A, that's really boring. And B, when you hear Harriet and William Harris Park, the first thing any person would do is, who's that? Then we would have informational signage, like the little wayside sign for the Civil War, the low impact thing that has some information showing the 77 acres and the story of the 16 formerly enslaved people on whose land we are now today. It's an amazing story, and the only place that I'm aware of in certainly Northern Virginia that's like that, where you have a town that's founded on land that was owned by formerly enslaved people, ties in the Primitive Baptist Church. So that's the idea of why this name. But it's not something we tee up and you guys will go, wow, that's cool, approved. To me, this is the kind of thing that, well, I know about it and some of you know about it. There may be citizens who don't know about it, and we should give those people an opportunity to weigh in my view. So I would recommend that at the October meeting, we open it up for anyone who wants to say anything. I hate the idea. I love the idea. Whatever it might be, that we give them an opportunity to have their voice and have their say. And then it would be after hearing from those people that we would then potentially take action on changing the name of the park. Once we've done that, where it says Clifton Town Park, it would have a different name, that goes without saying. And then we'd look at developing this informational signage. That's something we can do over a period of months because it's detailed and it needs to be right. The Civil War trail markers, so that you guys know, I worked on with Margot, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. Margot spearheaded that along with Chuck Rusnick and some others. But the wording on the signage, that comes from Margot and went through the history committee and many iterations. And the point is, it turned out really well, and it's really stood the test of time. So she knows her stuff. She does a great job with this, and we certainly rely on her. But this is the kind of thing that we would take a little bit of time and make sure we got it right. So this is the first time that we've talked about in a public meeting this as a proposed concept. I wanted to give some background on it. And I know that Peter Noonan, on behalf of the Racial Justice Committee, would like to give some comments about it as well. And after we hear from Peter, then the council could discuss it and talk about thoughts and next steps. So if Peter's available, he can chime in.
He's on mute currently.
There we go. Thanks for unmuting me. Can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Holloway and town council members. And thank you, Mayor, for sort of reviewing, I think, very extensively the history and sort of the work that's been done with respect to understanding the land itself. I want to first take the opportunity to say thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Peter Noonan. I live at 12635 Chapel Road. And as I believe most of you are aware, and as Mayor Holloway indicated, following the Black Lives Matter banner discussion, a group of town residents and others from around the town have formed a racial justice working group that seeks ways to ensure that we as a community continue to live by our town creed and welcome all to Clifton. And tonight, I have the very good fortune and opportunity to represent the park renaming subcommittee of our racial justice working group this evening. During the last several months, actually, or weeks, excuse me, some of our initial conversations as we began our conversations were about the renaming of the town park to more adequately represent the history of the parkland and to appropriately reflect the true history of the town of Clifton. Through our robust and thoughtful conversations with well over 25 people in the past weeks, we've discovered that the land, as Mayor Holloway indicated, that the town park sits on was owned by Harriet and William Harris. Yet the history is, in the words of one of our members, a bit convoluted, and the mayor alluded to that a little bit earlier. And I won't go through all of the history because I think he did an more than adequate job of that and appreciate it. But I do want to say that as part of our committee's work, several members of the Racial Justice Committee have reached out and been in contact with and consulted with direct descendants of the Beckwith enslaved people, particularly formerly enslaved Lawrence Hughes Nolan, who was one of the direct connections to the Harris. And after speaking with Miss Nolan, excuse me, there was great desire to have the park named after both Harriet and William Harris. In the end, because of the work of the many people on this committee, the Racial Justice Committee really exists in many ways to advance racial equity, racial justice, and healing in Clifton, and believes that it's appropriate to formally support, as our committee, the name of Harriet and William Harris Park as the new park name to ensure that we honor the Harris family properly. The Racial Justice Committee hopes that any name change to the park will just be the beginning of the hard work to ensure that true justice happens in our town, and it's not just performative action. We want to help heal those who have been marginalized in the community and beyond. And it is our collective hope as a committee that we can engage as a partner with the town council on other issues going forward to support this mission. And then lastly, in an effort to tell the true story of the founding of Clifton, or a very accurate story, as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, we would like to help in the development of appropriate signage that tells the Harris family story in the near future. There has been some conversation about that, perhaps that wayside marker, even what some of the language could be on the wayside marker, the placement of that over by the gazebo, the potentiality of having a larger marker on the alleyway between the Nickham's house and the church, as well as some signage on Chapel Street as well. So with that, I just wanted to let the council know that this has been a relatively big piece of what we've been talking about as part of our racial justice initiative and group here in Clifton. And we are in full support of Harriet and William Harris Park, and the order of names to us is very important, that Harriet comes first. So with that, I will end my comments. Appreciate your time, and hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, Peter. And just for the council's benefit, one of the things I'll point out on the naming and the order of the naming is that Harriet Harris is one of the people that was formerly enslaved by William E. Beckwith, who was the person who owned the 1,200 acres. Her husband, William, was not. And her husband, William, did not directly receive the land. He was not one of the 8 Harriet and William's 7 children. So Harriet and 7 children. He was not one of the 8 who received 8 out of 16, or 1/2 of the land south of the tracks. However, ironically, and this isn't a great story, but they had, of the 7 children they had, 2 of them passed away between 1863 and 1866 when the land was partitioned. And therefore the land that two of them owned ended up becoming owned by their parents because they were, young children. So by the time the land was partitioned, William, in fact, was one of the landowners. But Harriet really has primacy. And certainly we have no issues and no concern about listing Harriet first, at least I don't. And it's also alphabetically, comes before W. So lots of reasons on that, but just so you know, when people talk about the order of the names is important, there's a specific reason, and I could go on at length, and so could Margot, and so could Peter, and many others about it, but that's why. So when you hear that. So with that background, now everybody knows what's going on and why. Thoughts, questions? I propose that we'd wait till next month to act because I really feel like we should give people an opportunity to weigh in. Maybe nobody wants to weigh in, I don't know, but at least they'd have the opportunity and they couldn't say, I never heard of this. What's happening? I'm outraged. That being the concept, but thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice idea, but I agree with you, Bill. We should get the town's input, and they might come up with some additional ideas we haven't thought of.
Very good. Thank you, Pat.
I think the rollout is an interesting opportunity. I mean, ribbon cutting, and when the interpretive piece is there, it's a little bit unfortunate that we can't even really comprehend when we could even plan for such an event, given what's going on. But safely sometime out in the future, a way to roll it out would be a really nice thing for the town, I think. Making sure the history is right is clearly a important thing. So it's good to hear that we've done some very thorough research already to make sure that we get it right the first time. And it is a little bit complex to understand all the timing of things. But sounds like we'll have a bit of time. I don't know if there's any additional research that's going on, or if we're confident that we've got it down at this point, Bill.
Margot's looking up a couple things in the deed book that are just confirmatory side issues, but then one of the big pieces is in the interpretive signage. You can't put everything on there. You can put some things, but Harriet and William Harris are part of the story. There's also Elsie's, Beckwith's, Turner's among the formerly enslaved 16 that William E. Beckwith left his land to. And so William E. Beckwith did not marry, was never married. He did not marry a white woman. Instead, he lived his life with a black woman, Sophie, and the children are mostly their children, which probably goes into why did he free all these people, even though the Civil War was going on. So there's a very interesting story there. Most of that stuff, we're very lucky because there was a will and then a property partition. So there's lots of clear evidence on all this, but we want to tell the story of the 16 formerly enslaved people and that they had the land. But as far as this park itself, that is Harriet and William Harris's land. So we want to tell that story and take the time to make sure we get it right and to make sure that what's on the informational sign, the wayside marker, is the right story that we wish to tell. One of the good things, Reagan, that you noted is because we're in this ridiculous COVID thing, we couldn't have a big party and festival anyway. So we've got a little bit of time to get it right, but I appreciate the admonition to make sure that we do get it right. And I know the racial justice group is continuing to work on this. I've been working on it almost every day because Margot is busily working on it. And Margot herself has been literally working on this for like 15 years and putting together the family tree and the timeline and all this documentation. So there's lots of work that has been done, but when we finally go to ink a sign, we'll want to make sure that we've really vetted it well. Sounds like people are supportive. Good. Okay. It sounds like people are supportive. It sounds like people agree that we should do a timed process where we give people in town an opportunity to know that this is going on. It'll be on the agenda for the next meeting. I want anyone who has anything to say about it to be able to have their say. And then we can make a decision and move forward. And look, what we're talking about here is Clifton's really into history, right? National Historic District. Everybody loves history, so on and so forth. However, Steve, I just want to say as a final point, that this is part of our history that we haven't captured yet. It's a part of our history we want to tell. So if that doesn't convince all of you, I don't know what will. Is this the don't sell through yes speech? All right, I got it. Okay, what's next? I'm excited about it. All right, here we go. Let's move right on from that to speed bumps. Speed bumps. Reagan, this is you.
Yeah.
Clifton Road, and talk about, I think we had another one a few days ago.
Yeah, let me give you an update on what we have been able to do and what's required going forward, and some of the feedback that I got from the various parties. We have had a rash of accidents this year over the past 4 or 5 months. Most recently, one over the weekend that was during the rain. It was during daylight, but it was raining out. And, James Stoflin's fence bared the brunt of that once again. Piece by piece, that fence is disappearing. But what I did is I approached VDOT and immediately asked them to replace the signage. So they knocked down the speed hump sign. A previous accident had knocked down the railroad crossing sign, and there was another accident that knocked down one of the chevrons that marks the bottom of the turn on Clifton Road. And we were down to one reflective sign. And so once notified, VDOT actually mobilized their contractor within 24 hours and put all that signage back. Beyond that, I sent a long list of ideas to VDOT to try to find out what is in the realm of possibility to improve safety and potentially some traffic calming in that area. And the feedback that I got, number one, the traffic light that's at the intersection of School Street, Clifton Road, and Pendleton there actually goes on and off constantly all night long, really for no reason. It's actually off right now as I look out my office window, and a few seconds later it'll be back on. They directed me to the Department of Streetlights, which takes online observations of maintenance issues, and they get sent over to Novec for action. So that's in play right now to try to get that streetlight fixed so that it's on appropriately, during darkness without flashing on and off. Because without it, especially during the rain, it's a bad place to be coming down that hill. So that's the streetlight part of it. I asked them about what else could be done in terms of a speed bump, potentially rumble strips, which would help us with traffic coming in as well as leaving town, and any other ideas. And what VDOT came back with is they sent it over to their traffic engineering folks to take a look at. They agreed with additional reflective signage and chevrons indicating the sharp curve coming down the hill. So they will take action on that when they have resources available to do that. The traffic calming stuff, they kicked over to the county's program. So there is a Fairfax County Residential Traffic Administration Program, which is pretty well spelled out in a policy paper. And I'm not sure if that section of road would qualify for it, but the first step is to take a look at that and go through our supervisor to get that into that program to be studied for traffic. They didn't think that speed bumps was something that VDOT would approve. So whether or not the county requests them ultimately is an open question. VDOT said that they wouldn't do rumble strips because of the adjacent neighbors and the sound that's generated from rumble strips. So I guess it's still an open question on exactly what might ultimately be recommended there. The county's process, which I've been through and I've read it through, actually requires adjacent residences to vote on the various measures and try to form consensus around that, and having at least half of the people support it by vote. So it's pretty well spelled out. If that's the direction that we ultimately need to go, we'll have to go through the whole process. It has criteria in there such that the speed limit needs to be 25, which it is. It also talks about vehicle trips being between 500 and 6,000, which I think we're well above. So there's a lot to learn about what's possible in that area. But at least today, that's where we are. On another note of trying to reduce noise in town, the council previously approved funding to procure signage. I have submitted a application similar to the banner application, so that we are on the right side of getting permission to install signage at the entrances to town that asks people to drive or ride quietly in town, to raise the consciousness of being quiet in a residential area. So that's in play as well. Any questions from council?
I guess I'd just point out the continued frustration when we ask VDOT about traffic calming. It seems like often we hear it can't be done, it can't be done, it can't be done. And we'll hear from citizens, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And the answer is VDOT won't let us. And they've got some restrictions in their policy or something like that. But it's a clear need that we see. It's an obvious safety problem. But VDOT is the gatekeeper on it. And if they won't agree, then there's not much we can do about it. They're not our roads, as it were.
One thing that I would add is that the speed bump near Dell on Main Street was replaced. So that was done sometime after the paving was done, but the contractor did come back around, and it's always part of the plan to replace those. Similarly, raising the one on Main Street that got virtually eliminated with the repaving a couple of years ago would be part of the traffic calming in general that we would have to revisit with the county's program.
To replace a previous speed bump that we did.
It's not in a contract right now for anybody, so we would need to get it teed up.
Just pay somebody to do it, basically. We don't have to get approval to do it. There's already a speed bump there. We just have to enhance it.
We don't do it. The county does it.
Yeah, I
Or
think
VDOT.
it's somewhere in between.
Okay.
I think what Reagan's saying is there's a recognition that it probably should be done, but it's not in anybody's plan or budget at VDOT to do it, so it's not going to get done. But to your point, I don't think we'd have to go through a whole new, we should prove there should be a speed bump there.
Yeah.
Rather, there was a speed bump and there kind of still is. It's just not really there anymore because, the street's been built up or whatever. So I think we wouldn't have to go through a new approval process to justify it, but we would have to get somebody to put in their budget they're going to do it whenever that might be. But hopefully we'll get some other stuff. I did hear positive feedback about the speed bump going up Dell from the Second Baptist people. They're very happy about it because people just scream up there. I don't know where they're going, but scream going out of town up there too.
Winery, can't get to the winery fast enough.
Yeah. And the speed bump really, really helps. So they're very effective. Anyway, you're now working through the county program or with the county program. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea. That's what we have to do. So we'll have to pursue that. I suspect it'll be a protracted process, but we'll keep pushing it.
The other thing VDOT could do if they won't put traffic calming measures in, they could put big nets on the turn there and they could catch the cars as they kind of go off the road. So there are some other options.
Yeah,
So,
it would be helpful. I will tell you that probably 2 weeks ago, there was a young man that came down the hill in a nice Mustang. It probably would have broken your heart, Bill, to see a nice car like that. He went into the fence sideways that night, took down the signs. But as we stood there with that guy waiting for police and records to come, and it was one of the dark nights and raining, virtually every car that came down the hill, we were concerned about that vehicle leaving the road as well. It's just the rate and the surprise that people, seem to have when they get to the bottom. It's so common.
Yep. Well,
We'll see what we can be done.
thanks for your efforts and keep up the good work. Maybe concerted pressure over time in the right place. There's clearly a need. This is not frivolous by any stretch of the imagination. And while we want to preserve fences, we're talking about people who could really be hurt. So it's the right thing to do. Okay, thank you for that. The last item on our agenda is Halloween. Plans for the town of Clifton and trick or treating. I put this on because people said, what are you doing for trick or treating? I'm like, well, we're not really the trick or treating police. We don't tell people they can't give candy out. However, there's something to be said for the town providing guidance to people as to what we think should be done. I don't know that we could cancel Halloween, as it were, or cancel Christmas for that matter. But we could certainly give our view about what should happen and how it should work. We can certainly do it at the next meeting, but I wanted to introduce the idea. It's not a CBA event. It's not a town event. It's an informal event where people come in and people dress up their houses and give out candy. So I think perhaps residents may say, hey, town council, have you thought about it? What do you think we should do? Do you have some guidance, which we may or may not follow, but if you have some guidance, that would be helpful. Has anybody thought about this? Does anyone have thoughts about it?
And we talked about the self-serve thing where you kind of put your stuff out and maybe you'd have to separate it out. So it would be a grab and go kind of thing. But I don't know. I guess it would be interesting to see if there's what other municipalities are doing or how it's going to be, controlled or not controlled. It is the one day a year that we all wear masks anyway. So.
Yeah, I guess everybody would have a costume. I'll tell you, I was downtown because I went down to get a picture of the sign at the park, okay, which is an awesome sign. It says, people like, oh, does it tell the whole story of the town or something like that? And the park sign says, Clifton Town Park, parking on Main Street only, group use by reservation only, motorized vehicles prohibited, park closed at 9 p.m. So very welcoming. But I went down to get a picture of that and I couldn't park. I was like up at Pat's place, just trying to park so I could walk back to get these pictures. I couldn't believe how many people were there. So here's my point. If all those people are out there for this weekend, I expect there are going to be a lot of people coming in for Halloween. So they'll probably be here. What do? I assume they'll be wearing masks. I assume they'll sort of do social-ish distancing. And people can certainly turn their lights off and not give away candy or set out a big bowl and trust the children to only take one, or wear a mask and, hold it 6 feet away or something. But it seems to me this won't be the case where no one's going to show up and we don't have to worry about it, but rather I think there will be people in town. So we have to think about what we want to do. Any other thoughts?
Well, it's a Saturday night too, and it's a full moon, so
yeah,
crowds are going to come.
I think if the town is to give any guidance, it would be to be safe.
Wear
what kind of guide?
masks.
What? Yeah.
Wear masks, social distance, make hand sanitizer available. Those are good things, right?
I think you got to think about, you have to think about the fact that it's not just the townspeople or the neighbors who are going around. It's Halloween has always been a huge
Sure.
event here, and there's no way you're going to be able to limit the number of people and be able to do social distancing with that many people in town. They're coming in van loads, and if people do that, then I think that's actually not being very responsible for the welfare of our residents or the people who are coming.
At this stage, I agree with you, Marilyn. I don't think it would be, if I had kids, I wouldn't be taking them trick or treating. We'd be finding something else to do. But we can't really, I don't see how we could prevent people from coming. And so, you know, I think if we're going to give any guidance, it should be just to advise residents of Clifton to be as safe as possible and trust their better judgment and follow the guidelines, like the CDC guidelines, et cetera, around social distancing. And if you're at high risk, stay inside. Don't put yourself at risk.
Well, aren't there still limitations on how many people should be gathering?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Are we, do we know if the CBA is going to be providing candy and the pub collecting it like usual? Because that, is just makes it more inviting.
No, we don't know. I'm sure Michelle would be ready to tell us about it, but we don't know. It's also very possible. It's September 1st. We're talking about 2 months from now. It is very possible that there will be guidance from the county, from the state. I'd almost be surprised if there wasn't. So we can take this up again next month, but just wanted to raise it in case people had specific thoughts. I think the idea is we can't stop people from coming. And we do want to encourage people to be safe, and we'll go from there. Okay, very good. That's all that's on the agenda. Next thing would be adjournment.
I want to thank Melissa for all the work she's done, and I think she's the one who should make that motion.
You are muted. You are muted, and
You're muted.
Your brilliance is not shining through unless you can read lips.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
The motion and a second. We roll call. Now we can do it by acclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we're done.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Smaller, getting smaller. Less people, just the hangers on.
You want me to stop the YouTube video?
Yeah.
Are you able to do that?
I stop live stream.
Yes.